I'm Doc John, the hobby rapper slash vlogger, and now in English. This is a vlog about how I write and wrote my lyrics, because those two differ quite a lot. And how? Well, now the end product of my lyrics and or tracks are going to depend on many different things that I take into account. And in the past, I did that rather different and not in a good way, but I will come back to that later. So what I now take into account when making lyrics and tracks, one certain point, sometimes more than another point, those are, in no specific order, the topic the lyric slash track is going to be about. Next, the beat I chose for the lyrics. What kind of beat I chose. For example, a straight up hip hop, a grimy, or a club beat. How fast or slow the beat is. Whether the beat itself contains a clearly hearable chorus or not. What mood I am in. And you don't always control that. Whether I write the track in one go or in several times. For example, whether I write the raw version of the entire song in one go, or that I do, like for example, 3 verses over 3 weeks and then make that one song. Yeah. Whether I want to bring the lyrics with my standard flow, a somewhat faster flow, or a more based on a deep rap voice slow flow. Yeah. With what kind of delivery I want to bring the lyrics. Like a relaxed delivery, an angry delivery, a funny sounding, or for example, a sad delivery. Yeah, the structure of my lyrics. For example, if it's 3 short verses and a chorus, or instead one very long verse without a chorus. How much or how little multi-rhyme there is in my lyrics, because a lot of multi-rhyme makes it 9 out of 10 times that a track will be easier to flow, especially on a beat. But on the other hand, a lot of multi-rhymes in a lyric, well, that's just more difficult to sync up. It is, and that's just the way it is. How many or how few things I scrapped and deleted from my last version of my lyrics. That's very important, and a lot of people underestimate that, but that's very important. And I'll explain that in more detail in the next vlog, maybe. How hard it was to write a good third verse on tracks with third verses, because third verses are almost always more difficult to write compared to your first and second verse. And yes, you can also like instead sing or even sing with autotune on your third verse instead of rap on it, like Kanye and West autotune style. But you have to be able to do so, or have a voice that mixes well with autotune for a rapper. And I don't have that, so I personally can't do that, and also I don't recommend that. Yeah. Whether I want to add all kinds of FX, and for those who don't know what that is, that's a musical term for artificial effects. So whether I want to have a lot of artificial effects added to my beat and or voice, yes or no. And finally, also from whether I will also actually release the track or even record it, yes or no. Because sometimes you just have just written a great sounding lyric at that time, or pre-recorded a cool sounding song, then you take a break, and then a little later you get back to that lyric or that song, and then you're like, well, I'm not sure, and I better not release this, because if I do so, then I can get into a lot of trouble over this song, or worse, like street beef. And usually that's not worth it. Yeah. So that's the way how I write nowadays. But earlier on, when I just rapped for about 2 years, or perhaps more accurately, talked with rhyming words at the end of my sentences, then I wrote very differently. And how? I don't remember that completely, but it went something like this. I wrote down a random number of sentences with rhyming words at the end of those sentences, and then again. And then I glued them together. And then I started another verse or chorus. And if my verses were the same length or not, I did not think of that. And next, does the line sound nice or funny? Yes or no? If no, I don't remember what I did then. But if yes, then I went straight on to the next line. And to check whether if one or more of my lines contradicted each other or not, like my infamous line from my infamous whack first single, The Opkomst, The Rise, I bring it hardcore, at least that's what I go for, which contradicts each other rather hard. So to check whether lines were contradicting each other or not, yeah, I did not do that at all back then. Even though that's pretty stupid, looking back, but hey. Sometimes back then I even thought as long as it rhymes, more than that doesn't matter. Even though that is looking back extremely stupid, but yeah. And I even once just recorded a word that I could not pronounce properly back then. So that was the word tug. Yeah, but I pronounced it as Turk back then. So in that very old sound, so in that very old song, it sounded like Doc John the Turk. Yeah, that's right, Doc John the Turk. And I'm not a Turk. Really, not at all. But I only realized it sounded like that until long after I had already released the song. And it should have been Doc John the Turk, yet it sounded like Doc John the Turk. And yes, a long time ago I also had a short period in my life in which I thought, yeah, in which I really thought I was a gangster. Even though I was not and am not, but that's a topic for another time. And lastly, long ago I wanted to record and release many songs, but at the same time I was not willing to put much time in each individual song, which is good for quantity. Yeah, real good for quantity, but bad for quality. And the points I just mentioned about my old ways of making lyrics and tracks, well, you better view those as a warning than as a thing to learn from, because otherwise you will get things like a group Facebook like page, hate page, with still about around 300 members, yes, 300 members or more, who called for me to quit rapping, and who even said that my rapping did pain to their motherfucking ears. Yeah, and the people from that hate group page also wanted to send a letter to my parents back then to get it done to get me stopping from rapping. However, I was already an adult back then, so that was never legally, yeah, never legally possible, by the way, anyway. But anyway, it seems clear, or at least it should, that the points of how I write nowadays are much less weird than the points of how I wrote my lyrics and songs a long time ago. And if you want to make it as a rapper, then you better follow my first tips of this vlog than my last tips. Yeah, for real. Otherwise you'll get in trouble. Anyway, that's it for now. Boom out!